Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. Each week, I'm sharing stories from my path and using the power of conversation and collaboration with my many great guests. Together, we chart a course toward understanding, bridging divides, and fostering a community where wisdom prevails over discord. Friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. The only good thing about a bad attitude is we have the ability as individuals to change it. For me, it starts with gratitude and personal accountability. I am so incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to join me for another powerful DTH episode. Please remember to subscribe and share the DTH podcast with your network of friends. If you would like to support the show, check out the Support Us page on the D-Rate the Hate website. With that, my friends, let's get to it. Hey, friends. In this episode, I am joined by my new friend Dana Diaz, author of the book Gasping for Air, to discuss narcissistic abuse. Dana shares her personal experience with narcissistic abuse and how she recognized the signs. We discuss the insidious nature of narcissistic abuse and how it gradually escalates over time. Dana also addresses the challenges of confronting that reality of the abuse and the importance of listening to one's gut instincts. We discuss the ongoing hate and judgment that survivors of narcissistic abuse often face and the need to speak out and share their stories. The episode concludes with a quiz that Dana has come up with to help listeners determine if they are dealing with narcissistic abuse and where they can find more information about Dana. It's a sensitive topic that nobody really wants to confront, but in order to heal, you have to recognize and learn how to overcome and get beyond these narcissistic abusive relationships. Friends, this is an important conversation, a sensitive conversation, and one you're not going to want to miss. With that, my friends, here we go. Dana Diaz, thank you for joining me on the D-Rate the Hate podcast, my friend. It's I've been looking forward to this. This is going to be a good conversation because it's something that I think a lot of people these days are dealing with, and people hear about it, people talk about it, but a lot of people don't quite understand truly what it is, and that is narcissistic abuse. So Dana Diaz, I'm so excited to have this conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. And I agree. And I have to say that the word narcissist is used so loosely right now that it's almost offensive sometimes for those of us that have experienced the abuse of a narcissist, to such severity that, in my case, he actually told somebody he wanted to kill me. He was planning to. So it's a very serious thing that can be anything on the low end of just something with somebody with a very healthy self-esteem that's taken selfies of themselves, but really does look as good as they think they do, to somebody who's really trying to overpower and dominate and potentially, harm the person that they are trying to seek this exaltation and admiration and praise from. So it is it's a very serious thing, but I do want to, clarify what it is because it is confusing to people. It is exactly what it sounds like. Narcissistic abuse is when a narcissist abuses you. Right. Not all narcissists abuse people, just the malignant narcissists. And the way I describe it is just like tumors. A benign tumor that you have in your body is just there. It's not going to cause you problems. You may or may not remove it. It's just there. The malignant tumor, it's going to cause you problems. It might even kill you, and you have to remove it. There's just no other way around it. So the same applies with malignant narcissists versus just plain old regular narcissists. So, and there's certainly a severity. Narcissists, when they abuse somebody, they are using any or all forms of abuse, which include physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, legal, financial. The gaslighting and manipulation is just rampant with them because that's how they overpower and dominate people and manipulate situations, even to seek, their whatever their end goal is, which is usually some form of gratitude or appreciation so that it fulfills their ego and their sense of who they want to be perceived at versus who they really think they are. But that's narcissism in a very simplistic nutshell,
Right.
just to give some basis of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something that you said there, right to start off, Dana, and that's so often today with whether it be narcissism or people who call people racists or sexist or xenophobic, homophobic. So many of these terms today are so overused.
Yes.
And what happens is exactly what you're talking about. They start to lose their real. They start to lose the strength that those terms really do need,
right,
to describe these people, because when you overuse a term or start to call everybody that you disagree with or don't like or whatever a racist or a narcissist or whatever, that really does a huge disservice to those who have been the victim of narcissism or racism or whatever the ism happens to be. By taking that, it takes the true gravity of that, the true sickness that comes along with that, away from it, and it's just a huge disservice. So I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because this term narcissistic abuse and what a narcissist is. I mean, I know you really just kind of boiled it down and threw a lot of information out there right off the bat for people, but just give a few quick examples, Dana, of things. I know you've got this incredible book, Gasping for Air, and it's a true account of what you dealt with in your former marriage and the horrors that you experienced. Talk to me about how you started to learn what a narcissist was and how you found out that what you were dealing with for so many years was narcissistic abuse.
Well, here's the sad truth of it, is that I was raised, my stepfather was the king of all narcissists, and I recognized it. I mean, at 5, 6 years old, I saw how ridiculous he was, having to brag about things. And if the neighbor got a 50-inch TV, we had to have a 55-inch TV. And he would buy a new car and honk as he went down the street, so everybody would look out their windows to see who it was. And it was annoying. But he also physically and verbally abused me. And diminished me to nothing, made sure to tell me almost every day that I was not wanted. I was not going to ever be loved. I was nothing. I was stupid. I'd never amount to anything, et cetera, et cetera. And so the physical abuse just basically followed that and made me internalize that, which, I want to say, to add on to what you were just saying before I continue on, is that we're so quick to label. I don't know why people need to compartmentalize others, because it's judgmental. I don't care what you call abuse or bullying or being mean. I've put it out on my posts. An a-hole is an a-hole, and abuse is abuse. And that's what it comes down to. I don't care what you call somebody. So, if anyone listening to this wants to take the narcissist aspect out of it, that's fine. But reality is what it is. So I absolutely had an idea of what a narcissist was. But as a little kid in the 70s and 80s, I didn't know what a narcissist was. And back then, nobody talked about narcissism. It wasn't a thing. So the first time I met my ex-husband, the very first time, within seconds, he was aloof. I could tell he wanted entitlement and servitude. It was repulsive. I'm like, I know this type. He reminded me of my abusive stepfather. I just left that house. I was not interested in any part of this, but at the same time, what happens when you are abused as a child? And basically, again, I had a mother who looked the other way because the reality was she hadn't wanted me. I was a teenage pregnancy during the 70s when it wasn't acceptable for a woman to be unwed and pregnant. And she had even had her tubes tied immediately after my birth. So she didn't even want kids, never mind me. So it was very hard to grow up not feeling loved. So here I am out in the world, meet this man who's just like my abusive stepfather, just right off the bat, I could see it. But what was I? Looking back, I was a codependent, people-pleasing, love-starved, I'm like a dog who will do a trick. You want paw? You want me to roll over for that little crumb, for that little tiny bit of a treat? I will do that for the time and the affection and, whatever I perceived to be love. So when he showed interest in me, even though everything inside of me said, no, not this guy, I thought, oh, I don't want to be judgmental. Here I was starting to be like my mother, enabling and excusing. And it was very fast within a week. And this is a typical narcissist thing. I know now within a week, he told me he loved me. It was him and I against the world. It was, just the two of us, we're just going to be amazing and wonderful. And he wanted to be with me forever. Well, of course, who wouldn't want to hear that? But especially, a young, naive girl just out in the world that had been told she'd never have anybody or anything. So I stayed and I tolerated a lot. But the thing about narcissists, and this is to answer your question, it wasn't, I'm ashamed to say, you would think with my background that I would have known right off the bat when abuse happened. But it wasn't when he swung a crowbar at my head or punched holes in the walls or the prescription drug incident when he drugged my body into a bathroom hoping I would die and relieve us all of my burden. It wasn't shooting a gun. It wasn't, it wasn't all these things that should have alerted me that I needed to get out of this very toxic situation that obviously wasn't working. It was when I went to file an order of protection, which happened to be after our divorce, and we were together 25 years. Wow. He actually became most violent after the divorce because, he's a narcissist. He couldn't stand the offense of, his wife divorcing him. So I had to pay for it. It became like a show, like Survivor, like who's going to survive this? Really, one of us would end up dead, I thought, before this would be over. Mm-hmm. So I'm filling out an order of protection at the courthouse and they're asking these questions. Do you feel threatened? Has there ever been physical threat? Does the person stalk you? Has the person ever said or written, anything about, killing, all these questions. And I'm marking yes. I'm checking the boxes honestly. Mm-hmm. I checked all the boxes. And it's telling me at the end, here's the number for the national, domestic violence hotline. I'm like, come on now. If anyone knows what abuse is, I know what abuse is. This wasn't abuse. This was just a really dysfunctional and very toxic relationship. So I went back and I reread every question because I'm like, I must have filled this out wrong. But then I checked all the boxes again and I had to sit there. I think my mouth dropped and I had to sit there and kind of process the fact that for 25 years, I had endured abuse and that I had allowed him, to abuse me. Because the thing about narcissism is that it's very insidious. It starts with these little things that turn into big things. So when you're at point B, you look back at point A and you say, how the hell did that happen? How did I get here? How did that turn into that? Like, how did, I went to church. I've always gone to church my whole life. So when I met him, it's Sunday and, I got to get ready for church. Oh, well, I don't go to church. I don't believe in God. Why don't you just stay home and snuggle with me? We'll watch movies and hang out. oh, you're right, it won't hurt to skip one Sunday, right? What's the big deal? But then by the end, it's you're effing the priest. Yes, I am screwing the 80-year-old priest. That's why I'm going to church. You love God more than you love me. Well, isn't that what I'm supposed to do?
No,
So you know what I'm saying? And that's a very minor example. Take out the domestic violence and all that, but it's just every time they push the bounds, they push it just a little more. Because if it had gone to from 0 to 60 right in the beginning, peace out, brother. I'm out. I don't need this crap, right?
Sure.
But they do it little by little. They push the bounds a little more every time. So you're teetering on the, I don't like this, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not enough. But then you kind of become unfazed at the progression of it to where what would have been a deal breaker before isn't now because it just got that much further along. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
well, it does. And you have these little guilt trips and it's the things that they're all engineered to create self-doubt and make you believe that you are the one that's in the wrong, and somehow what you are is offensive to them and you have to change. Isn't that right? It
absolutely.
It
absolutely. You're the controlling one. You're trying to
word.
Manipulate them. That's what they're thinking. They're trying to spin everything around. And the problem we run into is like, as a child, okay, verbal and physical abuse. I didn't like it. It sucked, but it happened and it was there. I could process it. It didn't happen like every second of every day. So there was time between to kind of regain my sense of self and process what had happened. With a narcissist, again, they're using multiple tactics, So it's like dodging bullets left and right. And you don't have time to deal with this bullet before another one hits you and another one, to the point where you're just so overwhelmed. You either, like I did, I ended up just like kind of waving the white flag, like submitting, because it's like I'm putting my head under cover, like, okay, whatever you want, just to stop the bullets from flying, whatever we need to keep the peace. And then after we had our son, of course, I want this kid to live as normal a life as he could in the situation that we were in, that yes, I'm going to submit. I'm going to do whatever you say. I'm going to follow your rules. And Lord knows there were so many damn rules, spoken, unspoken, written, even twice in our marriage. And I still have one of them. Yeah, one of them's in the book. And what makes me sad is when I was writing my book, I took out the one piece of legal pad paper that I had kept. I had found it on my desk one day towards the end of our marriage, how to be a good wife, and a list of things that I apparently wasn't doing to be a good wife. And
that was nice of him to make the list.
It was nice of him. But the sad thing is that, do you know, if I pulled it out and showed it to you right now, I had checked them off, like not all of them. I was working on it though, because I just thought if I could make this man happy, if I could do whatever it is that's going to appease him, if he was happy, maybe then we'd have a chance. Because, the other thing people don't realize, he wasn't running around like Chucky with disheveled hair and a butcher knife and a striped sweater looking crazy. This was somebody who, we had good moments. There were good times. There were times where I actually liked him and thought he was as funny as everyone else thought. When we were out at our kids' t-ball game, everybody liked him. I was smiling and I brought cupcakes and we looked like a happy family. But behind closed doors, it's completely different. That's when, people talk about they take off the mask. But the sad thing is, and a friend, that I confided in after it was all said and done, she's like, yeah, but you were wearing a mask too, because nobody knew. Nobody knew. You were putting on the show. You were playing your role. And I think that's the sad part to me, is that as strong of a personality as I am, and as opinionated and educated and all these things, I am not a person that I would ever think I'm the last person I would think would like submit to another man or, make any kind of attempt to lower or subdue myself for somebody. But there was no, I mean, when my life is on the line, when my kid needs some damn stability and consistency in his life, yeah, you're going to do what you have to do. And so that's what I did.
Oh, for sure. And Dana, when we think about it, I mean, there's so much to this now that people, didn't know 20, 30, 40 years ago, and if they did, it was unspoken. But, as a child, especially, growing up in the 70s and the 80s and things like that, when you're growing up, and one of the things that stood out, Dana, in the initial email you sent me, was the whole thing about, your mother, not wanting you and growing up with that right off the bat. And then, and then your stepfather being this narcissist. And so you're in a position right off the bat. I mean, right from Jump Street, you're this little kid that's learning that love is trying to appease and submit to those who don't really like you, but you are constantly in a position for which you're trying to find that love, trying to work for that love. And that's all you ever knew growing up. So that kind of thing, when that's all you've ever known, and trying to break that cycle is nearly impossible. And then so to find out that you later in life, not so much later in life, but pretty darn quick after you left that environment, to find out that you fell into another environment very, very similar, and to talk about the submission and trying to appease just to keep the peace. And then now all of a sudden you've got a child, and then you're in the back of your mind, you're constantly thinking the same thing. I don't want my child to relive the horrors that I lived as a child. So I'm going to do everything I can to keep the peace. Those kind of things are, it's, I go back to the word that you've said a couple times in this conversation, Dana, and insidious it's a strong word. It's one of those words that I don't like to see overused, just like we talked about in our conversation already. But the type of people that that subject people to this kind of behavior are insidious. Because that kind of thing, and don't think it's any, we can't kid ourselves and believe that it just happened by circumstance, because, just like most abusers seek out those that they know they can abuse, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was the perfect storm with him. It was the perfect storm for us to meet and to get together. Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk about your book then, Gasping for Air, and how, obviously this is the story that obviously led to the book. But at what point did you realize my story is something that I have to share with the rest of the world? I have to be a voice for those that feel they're unseen, unheard, they're voiceless. How did you come to that point, Dana? And just walk me through that a little bit.
Well, unfortunately, when I finally consulted with an attorney to talk about filing for divorce, I left her with some homework that I had to do to get things in order to file. And we went into the shelter in place for COVID a week later. So courts were shut down. I was stuck in the house with this man. I moved to my basement. And at that point, he knew it was over. It had been over for many, many years, but he knew that he knew without knowing that I was definitely planning something. I was definitely done with the marriage. So I was worried because there were things that he was texting and emailing me that made me concerned for my safety and for my life. And then, I did hear from our neighbor that he told them that he was planning to kill me. So I started keeping a record of everything he was saying and doing. I was ignoring phone calls so that he would, he couldn't stop himself from emailing or texting me instead to convey whatever it was he wanted to say verbally, because I wanted a written record. So I was basically compiling evidence. He just didn't know it. But I had to make sure that if something happened to me and it looked like an accident, which is what I suspected, that it would be discovered that it was him. So somewhere along the lines between the divorce being finalized, that, he moved out, all these things, it was done, it was over. It just occurred to me. I had a degree in journalism and I minored in psychology. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but he had made sure to move us 90 miles away from everything and everyone I knew. So there were very few opportunities in this little podunk town that he had us in. He'd actually had me working cleaning houses, which, I'm a humble person. It doesn't bother me. It paid the bills and it was fine. But I realized that he didn't want me to have a career as a writer or in journalism or anything basically that would give me any sense of success or achievement or financial freedom, to be able to leave him. So I decided, you know what, he doesn't call the shots anymore. This is my life and I'm going to do what Dana wants. And what do I want? I want to be a writer. And the other tidbit of this is that in isolating me, I didn't have a smartphone until late in 2020 when we were done, because he didn't want me. He didn't even like me on the computer, on the internet, because I couldn't read books, because he always had some reason that I wasn't paying attention to this or that if I was filling my mind with wonderful things. But really, he just didn't want me to be influenced by anyone or anything, because obviously I'd be influenced to leave him if I had an independent thought or opportunity. So without him there, I just said, to hell with it. I'm 45 years old. I need to live my life. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I wanted to write. So even though I was still cleaning houses for work in my spare time, I basically took my notebook. Once I realized, after this order of protection and all these things that were kind of coming, together for me, and realizing that, oh my gosh, I got on Facebook for the first time ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this narcissist stuff, this is a thing. Like, people are going through the same things. And I'll never forget listening to a podcast for the very first time. It was like the whole new world for me with the smartphone. But this podcast where this woman was talking about her narcissistic ex-husband. And I thought, word for word, I'm like, that's just like she lived my life. But what really compelled me was that I had gotten sick at the end of our relationship. All those years of abuse had caused so much cortisol to run through my body that I had become autoimmune, because my white blood cells were eradicating the cortisol, thinking it was some kind of virus or cancer. And I also developed this lung disease that's common in victims of abuse, because it's also caused by the high cortisol. So I thought, people really need to be aware. I knew that my situation was not the most severe of all. I've heard many worse stories, but I do know that victims of any abuse are very reluctant to speak up during their abuse and even after, because they're afraid of retaliation from their abusers. And I understand, I was that girl, but I guess I've always had this fiery spirit in me. And I said, no, I've been silenced for too long, so I'm going to speak for everybody. And even though my situation is not the worst abuse that anybody has ever experienced, people need to know what it looks like, because just because somebody is walking around and looks perfectly fine and normal does not mean that they are. And there are awful things happening that need to be addressed, and our criminal system needs to get behind us a little more, because when it took me 3 court appearances to get my order of protection. And when I finally did, after a gun, a knife, all these different violent acts towards me, the judge gave me an order of protection that he had to stay 10 feet away from me. I was 93 pounds and 5'3". He could throw a 2x4 at me from 10 feet away from me and hurt me. So that wasn't enough. And I didn't feel that I should have to be run out of my own home scared, or have to be scared because he's following me to work and stalking me and doing all the things. He was coming into my house even when we weren't home and doing things in the house. It made me very uncomfortable. And the justice system just needs to work a little bit better to protect people.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. The fact that you've given voice to this, Dana, is so important. This is something that we talked about on the podcast back, I believe it was back in episode 130 with Shannon Petrovich. She's another person who talks about narcissist and narcissistic abuse and escaping the fog of toxic relationships. Just another incredible DTH episode. So if you get a chance, check that one out. But this is not an uncommon thing for people, and the idea. But one of the things that I want you to talk a little bit about before we finish up our time here together, Dana, is you have this. It's like a quiz for people to help, because I'm one of the biggest things with the DTH podcast and derate the hate. Let me step back real quick. So I want to talk about the quiz, but I also want to talk a little bit more about your personal story, because one of the things, again, that stood out in that initial email you sent me, Dana, was the fact that you still encounter hate. So we'll get to that quiz in a second, but you're still to this day encountering hate, and so dive into that a little bit for me, because obviously my goal is derate the hate, but you are still encountering hate to this day for speaking up, telling your story, doing these things. What is that about? Because I mean, is there like a group of narcissists that are out to get you, or and I don't mean to make it but I mean, it's I make a joke, but it's not really a joke. What is it about people? I mean, is it people that are from your past, people that were in your life, common friends of you and your ex-husband? Who is it that is still actively perpetuating this hate cycle towards you? And then we'll get into that quiz.
This is it's coming from everywhere, sadly. So I have no contact with my ex-husband. However, he purposely purchased a property 7 miles from where I live. So being in the small town area that we live in, it's only 7 minutes away, and it's of course on a main road that I have no choice but to pass through. And we do run past each other, I should say, driving by. But he has, said a lot of things about me that are untrue. Typical narcissist, he tells people I'm the narcissist and I abused him, and, I cheated and I stole all these things that he had been doing. But, it's interesting to me that people are so quick to judge somebody or believe somebody, and it's sad that I've learned that people will believe what they want to believe. They'll believe what suits them, I suppose. But, people that don't even know me have ideas about me, and it just makes me sad. And I don't have time to defend myself, and nor should I. I've learned that I don't owe anybody any explanation. I know what is, and I have factual evidence to prove a lot of what he has said about me. But the problem is our son hears it, and it has affected my relationship with my son, because, my son has said to me, well, Dad says this and you're saying that, so one of you is lying, and all I tell him is, one, I'm not going to discuss it with you because it's not your damn business and you don't need to know everything. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but I'm who I am, and I stand firm in what I say. So do what you want to do, but it still pains me, because
Sure.
that's Dana, the mom, but Dana, the human being, my heart is hurting because I
For sure.
stayed for many years just thinking that I was doing the right thing by not breaking up his home and by giving him two parents, even though we couldn't get along. But I also faced this from family. I'm estranged from my mother and stepfather, but the family, my stepfather's family, despite him being my stepfather, I mean, he's been in my life since I was somewhere around a year or two old, maybe 3, very early on. So his family was all those aunts and uncles and cousins, but they have decided to, of course, he and my mother have had what I call stories. There were always concocted versions of reality that they would tell people, to make it just like my ex, make it look like they were victims of something. Like I am the one that has a problem, so they can't possibly associate with me. And again, family has it's like they just erased me or exiled me, banished me. And I've had that from a few sides. And then my ex-husband's family, sadly, I was very close. His sister was my best friend for many years, and I loved his mother and father. I think that's part of why I stayed so long too and kept trying to make it work, because it was the family, his grandma and grandpa, his aunt, they were such lovely people, and they loved me. They really did. Even though he couldn't, they did. And they were my family. And again, the divorce happened, and it's like, I don't exist. My son even tells me that they hate me, his exact words. And I'm like, but what did I do? I'm the victim here. So it just comes at me from all ways. And then now I'm remarried to a longtime friend who I love dearly, and we have a beautiful marriage. But here again, his family has heard things, and I guess they choose to believe what they want to believe. So some of his family does not accept me. They don't acknowledge me as part of the family. They don't invite me to holidays or special events. And it's hurtful. I mean, I'm okay enough that I can deal with it. But when everywhere I turn, people are judging me and labeling me and hating me, and they don't even, some of them have no clue. But yes, I have had even somebody from my ex's family reach out to me that she read the book. And she did comment that, there were a couple people in the family that knew about the book, and that they just could not believe that they kind of looked at it as a vengeful act, that I was just so displeased about the divorce and with him that I wrote all these awful things about him. And I said to her, but wait a second. So it's okay for a man to shoot a gun and threaten his wife's life, and to show up in the middle of the night with a knife, and to try to kidnap your son and swing a crowbar? What about me? What about all these things? When does somebody have to look at him and say, you really messed up? You shouldn't have done that. Why am I to blame and taking the brunt of everybody's, upset about it? And she said, well, you're just not supposed to talk about things like that. So here we are with polite society, that I think somewhere between my generation and the baby boomers, I'm Generation X, but I think somewhere in there are a lot of people that have that feeling that, you just don't talk about that. And I've had people contact me, that have said, why do you have to bring all this up? Why do you have to rehash it? Because it's important, because I'm tired of crap being put under the rug, and somebody's got to say something. And guess what? I have 2 more books coming out next year, and one is dealing with the child abuse and how I grew up, and one's going to deal with the aftermath, where, I do talk about basically being exiled by everybody, and how, what an awful thing to do to somebody that's experienced so much trauma already. It's a wonder that I'm even alive and still standing here. Right. Honestly.
Well, and I think again, I'll go back to what I said earlier, Dana, and that's, giving voice to the voiceless, giving voice to those that feel that maybe they don't have the strength to say, what you're saying, or the will to do what you're doing, or just, frankly, they do want to just brush it under the rug. They just want it to be over, and they want to move on, but so many people forget that one of the best ways to heal is to confront what happened and work through it, and I think that's what you're doing. So let's we're right here at the end of our time, Dana, and I want to talk real quick about this. I don't know if you call it a quiz. I'll call it a quiz because it's this thing on your website. It says, "Are you dealing with narcissistic abuse?" It's a what is it? 13 questions that somebody can look at, and they can use that to help them determine, is this something that I'm dealing with? Because just like you said, like we talked about earlier in our conversation, that it doesn't go from 0 to 100% nightmare in the blink of an eye. It's baby steps. You don't get there overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. But one of the first things you have to do is figure out that that's where you're at. And so these quizzes, this particular quiz that you put together here on DanaDiaz.com, or was it DanaSDiaz.com?
DanaSDiaz, yeah.
So DanaSDiaz.com. Yeah, talk about that real quick, and then we'll kind of round out our time together here.
Yeah, absolutely. I put that together just as a general outline. I mean, there are so many aspects of narcissism, but there are general things to be aware of. Like if somebody, like I said, if somebody has rules, if they are dictating how you should be, what you should say, if they're demeaning you and insulting you, if they, there's a lot of aspects of that. But what I will say, to just sum all of it up, and even beyond those questions, just in general, if something doesn't feel right to you, listen to your gut, because it's probably right. I think we try so hard to force relationships and force situations to work that just don't. So if your gut is telling you what he said or what she said doesn't feel right, what they did does not sit well with me, listen to that. Address it. Don't excuse it. Don't enable it. Don't tolerate it. Do we want to be forgiving and understanding? Absolutely. Am I perfect all the time? Oh, God, no. God, no. But there's a difference between somebody who's truly sorry for their actions and doesn't want to hurt you that way again, versus somebody who just says that they're sorry, if they even do that, and continues to follow this pattern of hurting you in ways that you've already expressed are hurtful to you. So, it is a guideline. Definitely, if anyone is just wondering if their relationship, or what it could be, a parental relationship, romantic, it could even be a coworker, a friend, do the quiz. Those are just some guidelines, but always listen to your gut in every situation, because it'll usually guide you pretty well.
That's right. And one last thing that you just mentioned there that I want people to understand, and it does make so much sense, but people think that narcissistic abuse only comes out of romantic relationships or bad marriage or whatever. No, that narcissistic abuse,
it's everywhere.
You don't have to be married to the narcissist to experience narcissistic abuse, and there's narcissists everywhere, right? One of the things, I don't know if you ever listened to Dr. Drew Pinsky or like Adam Carolla or whatever, but they often say all roads lead to narcissism, and it is one of those things that we see so often today, and it can be a coworker, it can be a friend, it can be a family member or a spouse, whatever. That narcissistic abuse can come from everywhere, and it's really good to be able to recognize it and get away from it, because as I talk about so often, it's we when dealing with people, I say smiles and bad moods are contagious, but there is so much truth to the fact that we are, I don't care if you want to call it, we're the average of the 5 people we hang around the most, or
it's absolutely true, though.
All those things. We become toxic by being around toxic people, and we want to help people avoid that as much as possible. We're out here to better the world in every way that we can. Bettering the world one attitude at a time is obviously my tagline here. But Dana, it's been an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your story with me, and I hope people take the fact that Dana has been able to stand up and share her story and use that as strength to share your own story. If they want to learn more about you, Dana, learn more about your story, get the book Gasping for Air, where can they go?
Either go to my website, danasdiaz.com, or go straight to Amazon. It's there on the ebook or in print. Either way, ebook's always easier, but whatever suits you.
Very cool, my friend. Well, thank you so much, Dana. I appreciate you joining me here on the D-Rate the Hate podcast, and keep doing what you're doing to better the world. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Friends, if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. Share it with your friends, share it far and wide. And of course, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe right from our website so you can get the D-Rate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. So this is Wilk wrapping up for the week, saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If there is something that you would like to share with me, you can catch me on most social media platforms, or you can email me directly, wilk@wilksworld.com. With that, my friends, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.